Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Yiddish Poetica. Guten Abend allemen und seid begrüßt zum Yiddish Poetica. My name is Faye Burston, and I'm the cultural producer of Melbourne's Kadimah Jewish Cultural Centre, Australia's home of Yiddish language and culture. Before we get underway, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which the Kadimah stands today, with a Yiddish welcome to country. Wir anerkennen die traditionelle Opiter von dem Land, wo wir treffen sich heint, das Bunwarang Volk von dem Kulin Volk, und wir geben ab Covid ihre Bobes und Seides von Amol, von heint und von Zukunft, und von der Zukunft. Tonight's event is very special in a number of ways. As far as we know, it is the first online open mic Yiddish poetry event of its kind in Australia. We have 13 participants and almost 190 registered viewers from around Australia and abroad. It is also the first time that the three presenting organisations, the Dunera Project, Poetica and the Kadimah, have come together to present a show like this. For those who may be unfamiliar with us, the Kadimah is also Australia's oldest Jewish cultural organisation. Next year, we celebrate our 110th anniversary. So it is especially touching that we are able to partner with Australia's newest Jewish cultural organisation, the entirely digital Dunera Project, to co-present an event based around poetry, an utterly timeless literary form, with the lovely Poetica. You'll be hearing from Dunera founder Daniel Brinberg at the end of the event, and Poetica founder Miriam Hechtman will be your host tonight. And now it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce you to Miriam, an Australian writer, creative producer and poet. She has written for several publications, including the Australian Financial Review, researched for Discovery Channel and National Geographic, and was associate producer on Showtime documentary Outwitting Hitler. For several years, she partnered with award-winning UK photographer Harry Borden on the book Survivor, a portrait of the survivors of the Holocaust. Today, Miriam is the founder and creative director of Poetica, a creative initiative and live poetry and music event. She's also co-presenter and producer of poetry podcast Wordsmiths. She has been commissioned to write and perform her poetry for several organisations, including Australia Remade, for which she is the current Poet Laureate. Her poetry can also be seen and heard in a monthly commissioned poetry video series for Australian Jewish online publication Plus 61J. Miriam also runs author talks at Gertrude and Alice Bookstore. She's an avid traveller and is currently based in Sydney with her husband and two daughters. And with that, I'll now hand you over to the lovely Miriam. Enjoy Hotanoia.
The meeting is now streaming live on Facebook as well.
Thank you so much, Faye, and thank you, Dunera. It is a real joy to be here. This has been an epic project. We have been working on this for months, and it is really thrilling. And I have to say, to hear the acknowledgement of country in Yiddish is definitely the first time for me, and it was very special. So thank you, Faye, for working on that and making that effort, because that means a lot to me. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Yiddish Poetica. If you don't know about Poetica, some of you probably don't, it's run in Sydney, and it started as a very small little open mic poetry night at Gertrude and Alice Bookstore about 3 years ago. And it has grown into quite a big community. And of course, like everyone, we've gone online this year. And we run music nights, tribute nights, poetry nights. So it's quite an eclectic mix of people. Some of them are joining us tonight, and some of them are not familiar with Yiddish, I don't think. So this will be very interesting for them. What we do, and we've even been doing this online, is when you're sitting in an audience at Poetica, instead of applauding, you click your fingers or snap your fingers. You can all try that now to see what it looks like on the screen. And that sort of tells the poet that you might like a word, or you might like something they've said. And even in silence, this still looks good on a screen. So please do it. Or you can write CCC in the chat. And this dates back to New York in the beatnik era, when they were living in, big apartment blocks, and the sound would travel up through the heating. So it was too loud to applaud, so everyone just had to snap. So that is what we do, which feels kind of nice to go back to New York on a Yiddish Poetica. So that is what we do. We snap and we encourage our poets, and we love words. So this night is definitely about words. And Yiddish definitely holds something for me, obviously for all of you as well. And we chose childhood because I think for me, as someone who doesn't speak Yiddish, it is definitely in my ears and in my memories. And when I hear Yiddish, I am instantly, something happens to me. So it definitely means something to me. I'm happy that people are still speaking Yiddish, and I'm so pleased to do something with Kadimah and Dunera for this. So thank you. So the way we're going to do it is I'm just going to call up the poets that have agreed to be part of this event. If there's someone out there who did not put their hand up but then feels moved to share something, please just write something in the chat, because that happens on a Poetica night as well, where you didn't put your name in the hat and then you're like, oh, you know what, I've got that poem and I think I really want to read it. So please do, don't be too shy. We've got the night. Now I'm going to be the sacrificial poet, as we say, because I've written something little. So I'm going to start and then we're going to move on to the open mic. So something I wrote a while ago and sort of worked on it today, actually. So here we go. This is me. At the hospital, I enter the elevator. There's an old lady speaking European to an older lady. Mother and daughter, I surmise. Is it Yiddish, I stammer without thought or politeness, swept away in the familiar sounds and vision. It's Hungarian, the daughter tells me. I nod. But all I hear is my grandmother, my grandfather, their friends playing cards, drinking a whiskey at the bar. All I hear is my yesterdays, wrapped up in mother tongues, and I want to hear it so much my heart aches. Do you speak it, they ask me? No, it's one of those things we didn't do. We should have. One of those things, I tell them, with tears starting to surface. Yes, you still can, they tell me. Good to know another language. I know it's not the language, though. It's the sounds, the accents, the way my Nana said my name, Miriam, the way my papa whispered, "Treifene Sache nicht kusche," about the prawns we were secretly eating on holidays, the way my parents talked tachlis in front of us kids so we couldn't understand, the way my Auntie Susie welcomed me into her bosom when we visited her in Brooklyn, her plastic-covered couches as new as when they were bought. A shena meidele, a git in the shumma. Her words would sing as she held me tightly. Es, she would scream from the kitchen, bringing me more bagels, smoked salmon, anything to fatten me up. Even the angry words I will miss one day, like my dad's "Geh kacken auf den Yam" road rage, or my cousin Debbie's "such a verbissener" about someone she pitied. This is garnished, so many of my elders would cry. The vibration of my old world, my homelands. This language holds me, returns me to a time and place I can no longer find, only in memory. I arrive at ground level. They are going to the car park. I want to stay with them, but of course I leave. I take one last look at their familiar faces. Doors close. I walk to the car and I cry. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone. So first up is a friend of mine, Amanda Cohen. She comes from America. I'm going to see if she can you unmute yourself, Amanda?
Yeah, unmuted.
Oh, thank you. And Amanda's got well, I'll let her just read her poem because I love it already. So thank you, Amanda. And also, Amanda, if you want to just add anything about how Yiddish plays out in your life, please do.
I associate Yiddish with my grandparents. I know, and I don't hear a lot of Yiddish anymore, so it's kind of nice. It's this nostalgic, like warm, cozy feeling.
I hear you. Okay, I'm muting myself and the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Mim. The prayers passed in the plump palm grasp of my bubby's hand, in the powers it possessed to pacify as it pressed against my own. We gathered to atone. In the synagogue pews where we'd stand and sit and stand and sit and stand and sit and stand and sit at the rabbi's baritone cues. And with each command, my bubby would sigh, often roll her eyes, and loudly whisper some comment about all this fakakta exercise. We harmonized the Hebraic lines, memorized the repetition, our annual grounding in tradition. By admission, we were ignorant to their definition, but to her, comprehension was hardly relevant for confession or redemption, and never prevented her from reciting those lines with absolute conviction. It was all about intention. And though I, above all else, worshiped words, still, I felt that spiritual connection. Hers were big, round, chocolate brown eyes that would shine every time they caught their splitting image mirrored in mine. She let me sip the contraband coffee she'd sneak in the afternoon, offering her matriarchal assurance that Yom Kippur observance permits, if not prefers it. And besides, the founder of Starbucks is a Jew. My bubby was a storyteller too. With tools she exploited haphazardly, her poetry, its parallels, perhaps not purposeful, but no less profound. She found power in hyperbole that she truly believed to be true wholeheartedly. I relished in my disbelief suspension when she'd mentioned that milk and cookie pairing, that classic after-school snack coupling dessert with dairy, had its humble beginnings in Brooklyn as great-grandma Rosie's invention. And she'd get defensive if we pointed to the holes primed for poking, so it was never me who told her. But the more meat she added to back it up, the less her story sounded kosher. Her fables relatable, perhaps not in fact, but in perception. It's how she saw her world and how she saw her girls, everything as big as the love she gives. When I first read this poem, I was listed as a speaker, but she would have told everyone I was being featured at the Sydney Jewish Writers' Festival. Or not Sydney, but the whole of Australia. Though it's just as likely she would have said Austria, she wasn't very big on particulars. Not demonstrably discerning, hers was a certain disconcern for words that prompted her to swap similar sounding vernacular, like gazpacho with gazebo and feminist with womanizer, with this debonair disregard for denotation. Nor was she particularly proficient in proper pronunciation, though I suppose her prose was always poetic, if not prophetic, adept with impressive phonetics, whereas Masamon curry, now more aptly called Thai food, with our Ashkenazi genetics. And then there was the repetition. Each beloved by me story had 1,000 renditions, and the specifics might shift to elicit different levels of kvelling, be it 2 years, 2 months, and quite often 2 minutes between subsequent retellings. But overwhelmingly, the most compelling of her trademark phrases dwelling in my ever-swelling chest is when she'd lock our identical eyes. Mandala, she'd say, aren't we the luckiest? More potent than any published prayer or parochial proverb, the precept reverberated like a cymbal strike. In our muscles, in our bones, we were never alone, so aren't we the luckiest? She was widowed so young by the man she had loved since she was 10 years old and left to be a single mom. And just 10 days after his Shiva passed, she inhaled the exhale that would be her own mother's last. How grateful for their memories to be forever impressed. Aren't we the luckiest? By my age, she'd had a hysterectomy, and at 68, a mastectomy. And when the reconstructive surgery failed, I laid my kepi next to hers on the hospital bed. Aren't we the luckiest, she said. As though her story were strung with a series of charms, like the gold necklace that expanded with a pendant for each grandkid iridescent on her chest. Aren't we the luckiest? She used to sing us this lullaby about a candy store, but it was also about burning down that candy store to collect the insurance money. It's funny how long it took me to hear it, given how many times I listened. It's not that the lyrics were cryptic, it's just not what her lips delivered in their diction. The prayer was passed in the plump palm grasp of my bubby's hand, in the love and laughs and rose-colored tint to her glasses inherited in my own. She passed 4 days before we gathered to atone, and I wept in that empty temple where she should have pressed in next to me to savor the favored memories, The way I was raised to pray, we recited those lines we memorized and considered just what this Kaddish prayer had to do with how much I missed her, how I wished her big brown eyes would light up one more time. So when we said our goodbyes, we harmonized our prayers to God and also sang of candy stores and arson and insurance fraud. These days, prayers can be packaged and posted, sent like roses in place of condolences. I confess, I've learned more from literature than liturgy, and I picked apart any pocketed prayers and epics past and pressed them into passport stamps, except for the one, that matriarchal mantra I've elected to accept. And with the two strong legs that led me here, my beloved freedom of speech and this voice I bear, I knelt down on the ground where we laid her to rest and whispered, "Aren't we the luckiest?"
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thanks, Mim.
Thank you. That's Amanda Cohen. Thank you. All right, next we have Joe Teagle. Now, Joe is coming all the way from Byron Bay. Joe, can you unmute yourself?
I have.
Okay, good. Oh, here you are. Welcome.
Thank you. Byron Bay is not my home, but it's a very enjoyable place to be in this post-lockdown world that we find ourselves in.
That's
It's been
right.
frei.
Well, you enjoy. You enjoy. Now, how does Yiddish play out in your life?
Yiddish is my mamaloschen. It's what I heard from the moment I could hear. My parents were Yiddishists. My father was a stalwart of the Yiddish theatre in Melbourne and the Yiddish theatre in Sydney for a very short period as well, just to put some perspective. So I was born into Yiddish teaching and Yiddish land, as we call it. And I've been involved with the Kadimah now for some, let's just call it more than 50 years.
All right, well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on your holiday.
Thank
and I'm
you.
going to mute myself and give you the floor.
So a poet I am not, but I'm going to give it a shot. And this is a poem in Yiddish, and I'll go as slow as I can for all of those out there that don't understand Yiddish. I've made it somewhat topical or very topical because it's how I feel right now. So if poetry is meant to be reflective, this is my shot. A Bandit lebt noch in weißen Stiebel. Der Tate hat ständig gesagt, fahr nicht auf kein linker Wegen, wirst du nicht verblongen. So, Efsche hat mir nicht in Scheinig, weil was ist mehr, ist mir weinig. Wenn wir trachten schein wegen verblongen, wie nur man guckt sich herum, ist da, der geiler Kopf. Reden kann ständig mit seinen Narrigkeiten. Klappt es mir in Kopf, gibt es mir Tacke Kopfschmerzen. Am Leben a Dreier ist von alles und von gar nicht. Und für ein Geschäft, auf dem ist im ganzen Fall nicht. Der Menschheit sieht bloß ein falsches Bild von dir. Aber dem haben es gesagt, ist es oi weies zu mir. Bloß ein paar Jahre zurück hat man getracht, oh, kann ich gewinnen als ein wüster Maniak. Es ist Finsternis uns betroffen und rein ist der größere Paskudniak. Och und wei, aber nicht kein Sorgen. Bessere Psures wollen wir hören morgen. Aber nein, Tag bei Tag wird der Zukunft mehr weitig. Und hören ein ehrlichen Wort, das wird was einmal schwer auf dich. Und auch Mai voll mit Banditen hat geschaffen. Und durch Skandal nach Skandal ist der Lage verfallen. Es ist eine Welt wie gar nicht, ist mehr wichtig wie Geld. No, ein bisschen nicht schon mehr. Wie es uns gefällt. Lass mir bauen a Wand, a so hoch und a so breit. Sollen alle wissen, als halt, deine Freiheit ist weit. Dann ist gekommen der wüste Epidemik. Und der wunderliche Führer hat sich bewiesen als gar leidig. Durch Wahlen und falsche Teines und liegend noch liegend hat man gesagt, nein, weiter wird nicht herrschen. Ist mit Glück ein reiner Mensch. Nicht ein Junger, aber ein kluger und ein besseren Zukunft wird hoffentlich forschen. Ich guck voraus und nicht zurück. Hawaiirim, der Sturm hat sich gemacht geendigt. In einer Welt von Mischigas muss man sein ehrenlich. Tut mir a Teufel alle und fühlt sich an menschlich.
Thanks so much, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your dinner.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have another friend of mine, Joanne Fedler. Now, Joanne, I know you know how to unmute yourself.
I think I've done it. Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And I would love to know, Joe, how Yiddish has been in your life.
Well, my father and my auntie and my uncle, my late auntie and uncle used to speak it, and my grandfather. I never met my grandmother, the woman that I talk about in this poem that I wrote, and the poem, but she was a Yiddish poet, and I have her poetry collection, which was translated into English by my late auntie Ray. So I sort of looked at some of those and, you know, drew on some of that to write this poem, which I've called Inheriting Shiva.
Okay, whenever you're ready, I'm going to mute myself. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
A menopausal mishugas verklempt me in its clammy clutch. The mothering shtick is all but done. Did we raise mensches or schmendricks, gunnifs or wunderkinds? Schwitzing unbecomingly, I pluck that verstunkende whisker from my punim. These days, my tuchus does its own shtick. Phew, I'm oisgematted like the climate, bleary over the tsaurus we've left for our kinderlach. Then she rises in me, an indigestion of ancestry. My Boba Chaya, a balabosta, de Witzen, they called her for her wit. Oh, she could make you laugh, I've heard. A poet, the mastermind behind the sleight of hand that shipped my Zeta far from pogroms to a new land. Did she ever squeeze her pelvic floor, color her roots, cut back on the schmaltz while she waited for news from the mishpocha back in Poland? Check for a letter, turn on the radio, maybe things will get better. You never know. And when it came from the Heim, that her sister, husband, and their bubila, 3 of 6 million, had been engulfed in the flames, under that trifecta of yortzites, her heart plutzed from the pain. From her bed in the Edith Cavell nursing home, she asked for a pen. Avec mein gesund, our hearts full mit pain. Her last words before my father, newly bar mitzvahed, no more than a pisher, tore his shirt, yit gedal v'yit kedasht, and inherited Shiva. Ah, this thing they call getting old. Don't kvetch, I hear my Bobbe whisper. Kwel, mein Kind, to become an alte Kaka, Canaan horror.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks, Mem.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Joe. And everyone, there is the chat going on and it's lovely. So get in there, especially the poets, because people are writing things about your poems. So it's always nice to get a bit of feedback. Now, is Melanie Knepp here? Because I didn't see you earlier. Just having a quick squiz in. Melanie. All right, I'll come back to Melanie. I don't think she's here yet. Jacob Goldstein, can you unmute yourself?
I have. Can you hear me?
Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much. So as I've asked everyone, how's Yiddish in your life?
Well, it's my mammolution as well. My parents never really defeated English, so I spoke Yiddish with them for the whole of their lives. And so nowadays I speak it whenever I can, and there's a few groups that I belong to, small ones that talk Yiddish, but it's not the same thing, of course, but it's as good as you can get, as good as I can get.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to mute myself now and give you the floor.
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to say that the bar has been set so high above my head that I can't even see it. I didn't realize that there were going to be actual poets here. I thought it was just going to be people like me with their schoolboy poetry. But anyway, here it is. A poem in Yiddish, where to begin? I'm not a poet, just a knacke unanin. When I was obtuse, oi hot ma mama gekont schelten git. I don't know how or where she learned it. First, she called me a shlimazel mit Essig. Next level up was Schmegegia, a classic. Wenn ich zog blue zogt gru, if I murmured dissent, Chobdichin Loivich, if she was becoming upset. Chobdichin Kapura was more serious yet. Chvel der Unrecht na Tischebov was a threat to beware. Ich gehe entläufen wie der Pfeffer wächst, if I drove her spare. My father had a victual for every occasion. If I'd paid more attention, I'd be a real maven. I never heard him speak ill of any human. The closest he came when he saw a woman whose size was prodigious. Me kon sehen, as he fast nicht Tischebov, a comment religious. To a choile, ich wünsch dir a vier Schleime, sollst essen wie a Pferd und kacken wie a Beheime. In his shtetl, table manners weren't gehalten fest, so the kids had a ditty which expressed this best. Oi wei mir, der Tate trinkt Bier, der Mama esst, der Tate fresst, and lost nicht über für kein Guest. I'll finish with a verse which he taught me in rhyme. He got it from his Zayda once upon a time, expressing the wonder on seeing a steam train for the first time. Wer hat us gesehen und wer hat us gehört? As Feuer und Wasser soll schleppen wie ein Pferd. Oi hat a Pfaffe mit an eisernem Keuch. Von hinten fließt das Wasser, von oben geht Räuch. It's better in Yiddish, wouldn't you say? So I'll finish there and call it a day. Hashanim Dank.
That was fantastic. For someone who says he's not a poet, you managed to rhyme English and Yiddish, and I don't know how you did it. So that was brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you. Okay, and I've got Joe Kosh next. Now, Joe, can you unmute yourself? I'm just going to look for you.
Yep.
Okay.
You're on.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and you're coming up as Dora Hechtman, but that is Joe Kosh, everybody.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, Joe, when you're ready, I'm going to give you the floor, and you can also tell us also where Yiddish was in your life now, in your childhood.
Go now?
Yes. Go.
Okay. My childhood, we only spoke Yiddish. I speak Yiddish. I'm going to do the whole thing in Yiddish. I'm going to give you a bit of a dialogue in Yiddish because I think in Yiddish. We only spoke Yiddish at home. My parents came from Poland. They came from Galicia in Poland. I'm a Polish Yid. All right? So I'll just tell you it all in Yiddish. My name is Avrum Yossel Koch. Mein Vater heißt Bechel Koch. My mama hat geheißt Sure Gietel. And my Schwester hat geheißt Chaya Ruchel. Unfortunately, none of them are living anymore. I'm the last survivor. Du weißt was? Ich habe ein Beis Haaretz. Du weißt was hat gegangen auf die ganze Welt. So hat gegangen Azure auf die ganze Welt. Für die Menschen, so haben gerade krimme Augen. Du weißt, so haben gerade krimme Augen. Du weißt, von wem ich rede? Ja, unheimlich ein bisschen paar Wolle. Ich rede ein bisschen schnell. Aber ich gehe ein paar trinken. Ich bin so aufgeregt. Ich habe ein Beis Haaretz. Ich muss noch ein bisschen abreden des Haaretz. Du weißt was? Was sei essen, was sei legen ran in Morel, und ich geht. Sei essen Rakis, Chazas, was kriegt, was geht, was hat 4 Fies, was hat 2 Fies, was 3 Fies, sei essen all Ding. Was hat sie geschattet? Also ich was gegessen, ein bisschen ein Megale, ein Kischkale, ein bisschen ein Schmalzhering mit ein Zibberle. Was hat sie geschafft? Sie gibt mal Krebs und gegangen uns eine Cholera auf die ganze Welt. Und da geben ein Beispiel für die Jiden. Ich habe sich aufgeweckt, jeder in der Früh, ich habe gewinn angelegt, ein ganz für 2 Monate, aber ich gelegen angelegt. Ich habe sich aufgeweckt in der Früh, ich habe rausgegangen auf die Gas, ich habe getroffen ein Jid. Der Jid gesagt zu mir, du kennst Jakob Friedman? Ich habe gesagt, nein, ich kenne ihn ein bisschen. Nee, aus der Portie. Was meinst du aus der Portie? De Maße. Was ist die Maße? Was ist die Maße? Sag mal, was ist die Maße? Mit der Maße, ist krank. Hat mir 2 Wochen zu leben. Nee, ich darf nicht hören, was passiert. Ich habe gelebt eingelegt für schon 2 Monate. Das ist nicht geschadet. Ich habe gewollt nur gehen spazieren. Gibt mir die Maße. Geht zu Schiel Davene. Steht der Jitel, der leben sie mir. Und sagt sie mir, Kikke, a Jid hat gegangen aufrief, hat gehen an der Lehe, und sagt sie mir, Kikke Moen, größte zu legen, hab gekannt in daheim, und ich mache viele Brüche. Jeden sind so ich kann nicht sagen, kein Git vor it, oder sei Masse rup, sie schläft mit ihm, schläft mit ihr, ich weiß nicht. Es gibt so reden, Jid vor it, es ist immer sehr, gibt es doch sehen alle, ich kann da sagen, ein paar Witzen. Du weißt, was Jid darf nicht Kaffees? Zu Schiel geht nicht, zu Heide schleppt man zu der Weihe drückt man zu der Kippe fährt man mit zu Schicks kriegt. Das ist ein anderer. Jid geht darauf auf den Autobus. Hat eine Heuke. Und sucht zu dem Fuhrer für den Autobus, sucht zu dem, es kostet $1 für dir und $1 für den Heuke. Sucht er doppelt Geld. Sitzt sich weg und hat uns zu lachen. Sagt der Jid, was zu leben sind, sagt was lachst du? Das gibt so doppelt Geld. Ich habe gedreht, ich habe ein Kilo auch. Du weißt, was ich liege so eingelegt, so ein paar Wochen, ich habe gehabt, ein paar Bromfen zu trinken. Ich rede nur Jiddisch, ich erkläre Jiddisch, ich rede nur Jiddisch, ich rede auch Gittenpolische Jiddisch, kann ich verstehen, keine Lichtfertig Jiddisch, ich rede nur Jiddisch. Ich bin ein jüdischer Jüngel, ich stamme von einem jüdischen Heim. Ich kenne auch jüdische Witzen. Ich singe, ich habe gemacht ein paar Theaters. Und es ist sehr angenehm zu reden, ein jüdisches Wort mit einer jüdischen Chevre. Ich bin schon ein paar 70 Jahre alt. Ich drehe sich immer allein. Ich habe 3 Töchter, alle geheiratet. Ich habe eine naches für die Kinder. Ich kann davenen, ich leik Willen jeden Tag. Ich habe lieb ein Chochme, ich habe lieb ein Jiddisch Wort. Und ich bin in Sydney, in alle Magyaren. Ich habe gespielt Fußball, nur mit Magyaren. Ich bin eigentlich Polischer, was gerät kein Jiddisch, aber sich ausgelernt Magyarisch. Es ist immer sehr angenehm zu sagen, gibt Jua, gibt, glaube alle sagen, Gesinnten stark, Lass mir sollen alle nur sein gesinnt und haben git Masel und ich wünsche dir ein git Jahr und ein gesinnt Jahr. That's it.
I wish I could say I understood it all, but there are bits I am, and I can see everyone's laughing. Everyone's laughing, so this is good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
How was that?
I have to mute you. Can you mute yourself? Oh, okay, good. Okay. Well, I'll have to get translations later, won't I? Okay, now Suzanne Ikovich. I'm going to put you up next if that's okay. I can see you there. I'm going to unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Suzanne? Here we go.
Ich hab lieb zu hören. Ich hätte nicht, dass es so geht. Ich habe nicht gewollt sagen etwas. Ich hab lieb alles, was ich sehe habe. Sie say fine. Enjoy. Lots of naches.
Is that you, Suzanne?
Ja, ich hab geredet. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome. You'll have to speak to me in English. I'm sorry. You can talk to Faye in Yiddish.
Na, ich habe gesagt, dass ich hab lieb zu hören Yiddish. Ich rede nicht, dass es so geht. The show is amazing.
Oh, good. And have you got a poem? Have you got a poem or a story?
Nein, ich habe nicht prepared anything. No, ich habe lieb zu hören.
Okay. Okay, I had you on my list, but that's okay. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, Katja Grinberg, tell me you've got something. Can you hello,
Here we go. Hello,
welcome.
hello. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us. We were at sea in mispronounced words. We were elisions slipping by, drowning in unvoiced sounds, soft vowels misheard, often misspelt, hard consonants slurred. We never truly said who we were. Our saga was a lange meise. We were slurred abbreviations. We were Grishes and Fearas and Yashes and Mushes, Lisas and Veras and Kutches and Sushes. We tripped tongues. No one had heard people like us. Simple introductions became stuttered biographies. Easier to change names. Misha, who was Moshe, and Mikhail too, married Hilda, not Hildegard, as Mick and Hild named their kids after murdered folk, Katyusha and Dov. Kath and Dave. And I was just Kess. TH was too hard to wrap a tongue around. We were known as the Gluxes, and you can guess what that rhymed with at school. It made us melted pot lot of refos, crazier, more meshuggah. Our father, the Holzwurm in the camps where Arbeit made you frei, was a chippy, a carpenter here. Our mother escaped into music and books to forget the trains that bore them so far. Across the road, the Smiths and the McGregors called her the egghead, and she'd shrug and say in German, or maybe it was Yiddish, Nebisch, while our dad said it was Mamaloschen anyway, and how could they understand? It was hard enough for him. After the liberation, he was a translator for the Bolshis who were going after the Krauts. Lucky for them, languages slipped easily from him. Lucky for him, difficult words didn't bury him. But angry verbs got in the way and kind nouns were hard to find. So between half smiles and loud sighs, interpreting became our life too. Untranslatable aces hinted at clues, odd glues caught phrases, clauses snagged in the air. But in time, missing prepositions were mended and relative pronouns were laid to rest. Tenses lined up and new trains of thought brought something quite different. The Geschichte came to a fuller stop, and L'chaim and Happily Ever After became part of a new edition. But at the start of 2020, we went into lockdown. At the start of 2020, My son was at my mother's side when she died. It was a mitzvah, he said, a good thing, I was told. I took heart thinking this was an early, old ritual, part of an early shiva, just without all of us, and he was her shomer, her guard of honor. I imagined them masked and suited up together, pictured them alone in the hospital room. I tried shutting out the ticking and whining machines in my head, quite relieved I didn't have to re-explain the Zoom. COVID brought odd blessings, odd COVID, and then later, we, the closest mishpocha, gathered under a tree as if we were going on a family picnic. A lost kookaburra watched our minyan at the cemetery. Magpies swooped and interrupted our Kaddish prayers. We buried German songs and words torn from her long ago. In English, we remembered her chutzpah in outsmarting guards, Kveld at remembering koyach in outlasting armies. And she would have complained if she'd heard some of those words. Her language was that of Goethe, not Yiddish. She would have kvetched and reminded us her lullabies were Brunhilde's tunes for whom she was named, no less. She wasn't a bubba who baked strudel or made matzah balls, and we didn't grow up with challah and Shabbos candles down the hall. She reckoned she knew who she was. She'd learnt all that from the jackboots. So the boy with whom she joked over the years, taught to tread soft, was the gentle man who led our prayers. He was her mensch, who said Kaddish to our tears. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you, Katja.
Thank you.
I have to say, this is what happens at Poetica, is you have such different poems and feelings and words, and it's just doesn't matter what language you do it in. So this is beautiful. Thank you, everyone. I'm now going to call on Rose Heimson. Are you ready to go, Rose?
Okay. Well, like several other people here, Yiddish was my first language. Spoke it with my parents, and I learned to speak English when I went to school in Sydney. So some years ago, certainly more than 20, but less than 30, I was invited to join a small group of women who met about once a month, alternating in each other's homes. We meet over tea, coffee, and food. Of course, there's always food because we are Jewish after all. But the main item on the menu was that we spend the afternoon chatting in Yiddish, and that's what this rhyme is about. So, with apologies to any real poets out there, and in praise of the Yiddish groups who now meet via Zoom. Men hat in Sydney a paar Yiddische Gruppes. Seit Covid treffen wir sich auf die Computers. Men setzt sich bequem mit a gläserle Cover. Mit der Zeit a Sach meinses. Me helft euch klären Eizes. Men redt wegen Kinder, wegen einigler Rochet. Amul kimt a Witz, hast gehört von dem Schochet? Men redt wegen Kochen, von Kneidlach gebacken. Die wichtige Sache ist, mir gedenkt noch zu lachen. So a Dank zu dem Zoom, in a Dank zu die Freuen. Doch die ganze Zeit, wie man bleibt in der Heim, helfen sie machen die Woche sehr schein. Es ist gut, sie zu hören, und geht euch zu lachen. So bis man kennen sich treffen, wird man weiter das machen.
Thank you, Rose. I know about those Yiddish groups.
And you should.
Thank you so much. I'll get Mum to tell me later what you said.
Okay.
Okay, next up, I have Josh Rubin. I'm pretty sure is our youngest poet.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Joshua Rubin.
So I came to Yiddish as a student of Shalom Aleichem College, and I have been in love with it ever since it's become my neshama sprach. My grandfather spoke it, but I never heard him speak it, so it's very special to me. and I have enjoyed singing it and performing it throughout my years. This is the first full poem I've written, but I've always been meaning to, so here we go. Schweben die Wolkens vorbei in der Heich, Pamelach und leicht über Gassen und Häus. Wo wandert ihr Wolkens? Was sucht ihr von oben? Ich, wie die Wolkens, wogel herum, aber ich, mein Körper mit seinen zwei Miede Fies, geht zwischen, nicht über die Gassen und Häuser. Zu geerdigt und niederig, ein Mensch allein. Und was such ich von meinen Wogenischen? Frag nicht die Wolkens, was du entfernt nicht allein. Luft, was zu atmen, a Schmeichel von a Fremder. Efter wird mein Umet sich verkleinern in a Zimmer on Wend und on Dächer. Nur unter die schwebendige Wolkens. Schönen Dank.
Thank you so much. There's been a question actually about Shalom Aleichem, but I think you can go into the chat and maybe you can respond to Yehuda, who's asking about that school. For us Sydney people, I mean, I grew up in Melbourne, but there's nothing like that in Sydney, so as far as I know. So yes, thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much. Okay. Now, my friend Lou is on here. I'm seeing if she's still, are you still here, Lou? You are. I'm asking you to unmute.
Done.
How are you, Lou?
I'm good. I'm good. I feel like such a fraud being here.
But it's so, can you tell us, can you tell everyone, because this is not your language, Lou.
This is definitely not my language, Miriam, but I'll always give anything a go. I'm a shiksa guy. I know that's supposed to be an insult, but it doesn't insult me because I don't really know what it means. All my knowledge of Yiddish is from watching American TV, and all the words in that are usually quite rude. So when I put my hand up for this, I didn't know what to do, and then I found that I had a poem which already had 2 Yiddish words in it, and so I just thought I'd stick in a few more and translating it, which I think had worked. I do have a Jewish marriage, but that's a whole other story. She's not a poem, she's a novella. But so this poem is called She'll Be Apples, or in Yiddish, the best I can do is Äpfelfreu. So actually listening to everybody, I've learned how to pronounce some of the words that I found, so hopefully it works.
And
I love her once described me as connect.
Oh, Lou, I just want to add that you are a poet. So Lou is a poet and she's a regular at Poetica. So I'm just going to add that. Oh, have we just lost Lou? Oh. Lou, are you still there? I think her whole camera and audio just went. All right. Come back, Lou. That's right, Noi. All right. We'll move on and we'll wait till Lou returns. So I'm going to go to my dad, Aaron Hechtman. Can you unmute yourself, Aaron Hechtman? Where is he?
Here I am.
Here you are. Okay.
You got me? Okay.
Yes, right. And you can tell us about Yiddish in your life as well.
Yiddish in my life is basically Mamelution. Grew up speaking Yiddish before I spoke English, and I learned English when I was, I think, 5 or 6 years old. Anyway, I thought about what Mimit suggested in terms of putting a poem together or a short story or something like that. So I thought I'd just do something that was possibly very, very different, but it was very meaningful in my life growing up. And I believe it probably was very meaningful in a lot of people's lives. So here we go. It could have been any typical Sunday morning in our family home in the late 1950s. or a similar timeline or a Saturday evening, driving to Joseph and Hannah Eisen's in North Carlton. Coming from Melbourne, that's where we lived. It was an inner Melbourne suburb. And the conduit then was the phenomenon of inside wrestling. So the age of television, or 17-inch black and white circa 1956, had arrived. And with it, we were witnessing the transformation of home entertainment. Yes, we were witnessing the demise of radio and its serials as we knew them. And how could I forget the dulcet tones of the Lone Ranger's cry of "Hi-ho, Silver," or the distinctive ululating yell of Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan's Jungle Call, and my mother's Geschrei geniet mit dem "Hi-ho, Silber," and Schoen, Gisbach Kopfweitig. So I can still remember driving with my father in his Vanguard panel van, and from Victoria Street, Richmond, to Rathdown Street, Carlton. And on entering the Aisens' home through their front shop, we walked past a cutting table and a machine area that divided their quilt business from the dwelling area. 70 years later, we're witnessing the rebirth of commercial residential premises. The earthy, distinctive smells of damask fabrics and eiderdown filling that the front area had, and if I closed my eyes and concentrated, I could nostalgically smell it even now. So, nur label. If it's weiter sitzen and kicken auf die Bulwannen, wie sie kämpfen noch. Avada, replied my father. And there we were, sitting around Aizen's kitchen table with their 17-inch Admiral black and white, watching these gesunte Chayes uphacken sich the cap. And how could I forget the look on Hannah Aizen's face as she grimaced and vocalized, "Kann ich mehr kicken?" And with every punch, kick, throw, jump administered to an opponent by another in the wrestling ring. And then, of course, when retribution, you know, the payback time came, the ever memorable, "Gib mal zartne Kischkes, gib mal zarten Kopperhahn." And yes, lots of schwarze Tee was drunk, and cakes and biscuits was consumed, and vocal cords were exercised, and a fun time had been had by all. And of course, discussions involved the pros and cons of Alka-Seltzer and Eno's fruit salts and digestive properties. And I can still remember fondly Joseph Eisen sharing his Enos with my late father, remarking, "Label, du darfst probieren. Sie wird euch helfen, sie wird euch das Kennen git auskrebsen." And after 2 hours at the most, but the memory still lives on. So in those days of black and white TV, World Champion Wrestling was about the most ethnically charged and colorful stuff on air. And everyone was talking about it, be it at school, at a factory, or an office day, after viewing it into the next week. Television changed professional wrestling and made it more of a spectacle, and more visual. And it introduced gimmicks, and the persona of wrestlers became exaggerated. So you could tell just by looking who were the bad guys and who were the good guys. And the phenomenon, it really continued well into the 70s, and the Yiddish affection of their favorite heroes, to name a few, like Mario Milano, Mark Lewin, and Killer Kowalski, and Sheik Wadi Ahur. And so for thousands of families around Australia, no Sunday lunch was complete without tuning into Gentleman Jack, Hiram Little, and the boys. I'm not sure with a second name like Hiram. My guess is that there was a Yiddish neshama dwelling inside. Thank you.
Thanks, Dad. And just as you said that killer something, someone literally wrote it when you said the name. So
Killer Kowalski, of course.
Renata Singer. So you'll have to, you're definitely on the same wavelength there.
Good.
All right, thanks, Dad. Now Lou is here. So Lou, come back. We're so keen to hear what you're going to say. Can you unmute yourself, Lou? Oh dear. She was here. Yes, I can see you.
Thank you. Done.
Yes. Woohoo.
Thank you. Yes, I don't know what happened there. I'm doing this on my phone, but I've now secured it with blue tack and a charger, so it should be good to go. But I just wanted to say Everyone here is a poet, whether they think so or not, and then you should all come to Poetica and do some more poetry. Isn't that right, Miriam? Now I'm going to do my poem before the connection goes. It is called She'll Be Apples, or Apple Froy. A lover once described me as knackig, crisp and crunchy like a young apple, the new season kind, soft-skinned and dripping with sweet juice. Yes, I was once a delicious pink lady looking forward to a royal gala. Now I'm a Granny Smith, tart with a bite. My body is shaped like an apple, round and ripe. Rubens and Renoir, Cavell, apple, Freud, juicy apple women like me. But now my waistline is considered a health hazard, unlike the banana or the butter pear Freuen. Why are Freuen fruit salads and mensch just ah? My booba was a real balabutza, a domestic goddess, easily creating feasts for a dozen hungry people. She was an apple shape too. Her bare hands were so powerful, she could crack an apple open simply by twisting it, laying bare the five-pointed stern hidden inside. A little reminder of heaven in every bite of her apple kuchen, apple cake, aromatic with the tang of lemon peel and cloves. These days, I prefer my apple in liquid form, crisp, cold cider, the best and fastest cure for summer's heat. The first mensch who accepted an apple from a Freud found out the meaning of versuchen, temptation, and never regretted it. Even though it's so deeply unfashionable, a throwback to past centuries, a sometime object of derision, I am proud of this round apple goof, this apple body, flawed, stretched, scarred, bruised, fallen so far from the apple bloom, the apple tree. This goof has experienced all that KM life has to offer. This goof has navigated the veldt, crossed deserts, climbed every bell tower in Europe, braved the Great Pyramid of Khufu and the mastaba of Queen Teti, plunged into the oceans of 4 continents. This goof has walked the vast silence of Ormiston Pound, circumlocuted Uluru. This goof has loved intensely, and from that Liebe, that love, carried 2 babies and nurtured them with milk so shepherdic, abundant, that the mere thought of a hungry booba inspired those fontanen of Chayam, fountains of life, to flow unfashioned, unashamed. This goof, this body has suffered massive insults, endured pain beyond words, and healed her wounds. This goof survives, this goof thrives. Even though the shinen has faded, this apple still hangs on the bone, now saftig, ripe and ready, defying that skiltig schnitz, that final harvest. There's a few crunchy bissen left in this froy yet. I hope that wasn't too terrible. Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. Lou, I love you, as you know, and thank you so much. Thank you. Was that harder than the letter X?
No, it was actually easier. It just all flowed very easily into that poem.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
From everybody.
I hope you go and read the chat
Okay,
now.
thank you.
Go read the chat.
Okay. I will. Thank you.
This goof. I know. It's very good, isn't it? This goof. Okay, Helen Rosenberg, are you still out there? Let me see.
Yes, I am.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Helen. So like everyone, just tell us a little bit about Yiddish in your life and then go for it.
Okay, well, I had Yiddish around me growing up as a young child in Carlton. Spoke a little Yiddish with my grandparents and actually learned a little Yiddish for several years at Peretz Shul until I was about 12. And then in the intervening decades, I didn't read or write Yiddish until about 2.5 years ago when I started learning Yiddish again. And so I'm just going to read a fledgling piece of writing this evening, which I wrote for my class in response to our listening to some interviews with people about their first impressions of Melbourne when they arrived. So I've written about my mother. Der erste Eindruck von Melbourne. Über die Jahren hat mein Mama Chava mir erzählt wegen ihr erster Eindruck von Melbourne, wenn sie ist angekommen in 1939. Sie ist gewesen alt 11 Jahre. In Polen sind ihre Sprüche gewesen sehr arm. Sie haben gewohnt in ein kleines Zimmer, wo die Baba hat gekocht, die Seide hat gearbeitet für das Schneider, die Kinder haben gespielt und alle sind geschlafen. Sie haben gedarft rausgehen, abnehmen Wasser und genutzt ein gemeinsames Klosett. Und Nevada haben sie nicht gehabt, keine Elektrizität. Chava, ihr zwei kleine Brüder und mein Baba sind gefahren in Australien mit dem Schiff. Es ist gewesen schon Nacht, wenn sie haben gelandet in Station Pier. Und mein Seide, schon 2 Jahre in Melbourne, hat sie bald genommen zu seinem neuen Heim in Princess Hill. Dort hat geöffnet die Tür und mit einem Porträt und einem Tutz mit dem Finger angezündete Lampen im Korridor und in alle Ensemble 6 Zimmern. Es ist gewesen ein glänzendes Palast. Ich weiß nicht, ob Chava ist gut geschlafen die erste Nacht, aber ich weiß ja, als in der Früh ist sie rausgegangen, einen Kuck zu geben in Gas. Es ist gewesen ein lichtiger Tag. Und sie hat geguckt auf die breite Nature Strip in Mittengas mit allen grünen Bäumen und auf das schöne Häuser und hat eingesehen, als sie ist Tage angekommen zu einem anderen Leben. Und verdächtig, in dieselben Moment hat sie verstanden, als die Welt ist sehr unschuldig. Danke.
Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to do a check again if Melanie Knapp is here. No. Okay, so in that case, we are going to go on to, I hope I'm going to say your name right, Hinda Anna Burston. Do we think I'm saying that right? Can you unmute yourself or I'm going to find you? I've seen you. Here you are. I'm asking you to unmute. Is that coming up for you? Hinda Anna?
Okay, I'm here. I'm
Oh, good.
Hinda Enoch. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to read my poem on my screen, but it's not coming up.
So hard, isn't it? Oh, I know. You have to like push it to one side and.
I'll just come back here. Entschuldig. Hey.
You can put it on your phone and read it from your phone.
City speaker. I'm also a Yiddish writer. Who? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I'm a Yiddish writer, and I'm so excited to have so many Yiddish writers here tonight, because I was part of the Yiddish writers group when I lived in New York, but I've I didn't know there was people in Australia who write Yiddish, so I'm incredibly excited, and I'm also a little bit regretful that the poem that I'm going to read tonight is actually not in Yiddish, but is bilingual, and is also not really about my childhood, because I tried, but die Muse is an Akzente. The muse is very stubborn, and she insisted that because Yiddish is the language of my childhood, she insisted that instead I write about the things that I never heard about or was never allowed to write about in my childhood. So this is a bilingual poem of mine called Come Arein. Her room is dark and musty and smells of muscles that pulse and pull me in. Come her, a call to come summons my senses so sweetly. In sandalwood, her sandals lie by the door, teasing my shoes to join them in gay abandon. She has racks and racks of ties on display by her table. Chais and chamses nestle among books by Dropkin and Stock and Korn. Yiddish oisias curve down their spines. Come herein, a call to come summons my senses so softly. A scarf draped on the books begs me to undress their words so fresh, yet written so long ago. By the glow of the candle are lines and lines of numbers that have some kind of meaning I'd like to explore. Ich weiß nur die Zoll von Amol. A half-eaten apple tempts me to know the unknowable, while a shawl snakes itself round a lamp that lights like a moon in full glow. I know, ich weiß was wird sein, ob ich komme rein. I know I'm a fool to enter this cave of forbidden delights tonight, and yet, mitten Tarm von Flam, my taste buds are all aflame. Salty windows, bitter paintings, sour faces, sweet bed with a velvet cover to caress away my woes. Weg zu glätten die Wehen, kedei sich zu freien in zweien. I hear breath quicken, hers, mine, or both. I take it all in from my place by the door. No kum shon kum, I'm called to come, summoned so strongly I can't resist. I smell heartbeat, hear muscles, taste velvet, touch sweet, see a chance, and so I dare to enter. Arein, ich komm schon, arein. A schönen Dank.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you. Well, the next one, you can do one fully in Yiddish. Muse or no muse. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, I just muted you. Ooh. Sorry. Okay, now we're sort of coming to the end. I do have a little bit of a surprise, but I want to just check that there isn't anyone out there that's just thought, oh, I do have something and I wish I'd put my hand up. And is there anyone in the, you can just write in the chat. Is that a no? It's okay, we've had a very full night. Oh, Yehuda. Okay, Yehuda, I'm unmuting you.
I'm just editing a typo because let's just get rid of that. Okay. Right here, I'm unmuted. I didn't really have a Yiddish poem, but I thought I'd do little poetic vignettes on what my memories were sort of growing up in a very Jewish neighborhood. Okay. When I was a boy, Bondi was a bubble of 4 streets, shtetl by the sea. Before I learnt the history of Sydney synagogues, one carved from the bedrock of another, then there was only one, Flood Street, the shul on the hill, with only the temple to rival it. 3 years old, I sat on the oak pew to taste the letters touched with honey. Aleph, Beis, Gimel. A minion of men gathered around to show toothy white grins behind beers, and I remember it perfect, Polaroid, bathed in the morning light under frosted glass. I was still young enough to sneak behind the mechitza, hug my mama, and greet the Rebbitzin for a candy. Down the spiral staircase lay the kishkis of the shul. Follow the mikvah steam to find the men gossiping, towels around their waist. Business deals crept in like the wires on the wall. Something to hang your weekdays on. Wash it away, dip, then pray. And then there's another one. When I was a boy, Bondi was a bubble of 4 streets, a shtetl by the sea. Going to the beach meant Hall Street. The butcher beside it, Mama asked for mince and they called Tati to talk about the credit, offering me a salami. Their fingers as fat as sausages. Mama preferred steaks. Starks had tall shelves all the way to the roof. So tall they met at the ceiling like giants kissing. Between the shelves came a bumbling bocher, tweed hat on his head and a twisted beard between his fingers, trying to remember where he put the kichel. Tati fixed the computers at her co-op, eating a schmaltzy dinner roll from Tibi. Survivors would sit at the machine as they sung a mechanical song. Stel, 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 their faces like strudel dough, so thin, overworked. They'd get my cheeks and knead them, pull my payas and curl, curl. Till I'd run over those crimson red carpets with the call of Pisha chasing my steps. Alta Kaka was the correct response before wiping my hands on the velvet curtains. Thank you.
Thanks, Yehuda. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, unless there's someone else with a original poem, I am going to try and share my screen. And we have a little surprise, something we made earlier.
Thank you from Bella. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have a special surprise here. I think you all recognize this person. Can everyone see that?
Well, Yiddish is in my DNA. My father was a Yiddish poet and my mother was a performer of Yiddish song. So during the time of the pandemic, I did a series of posts called What We Do. Well, Yiddish pandemic, I did a series of posts called What We Do in the Time of the Plague. And one of these posts led to a simple song. And I got a reply when I posted it from my dear friend Kvetch and saying, do you want a melody? We've collaborated on a few songs in the past. Do you want a melody? She's over in Perth at the moment. And within a couple of hours, she had a gorgeous melody. The song is called To the River, Zum Teich, and it premiered just a few days ago on Sunday at a concert by the Boat. So it's performed by Kvetch and on keyboards, Pavan Hari. And I have to thank Daniel Chirac for helping me out. I've translated it just now. It's hot off the press into Yiddish. So what I'll do is, what we're going to do is I'm going to recite it in English, then recite it in Yiddish, and then you're going to see the song. So here goes. To the river. Take me down to the river. Take me down to the waterside. Take me down to the rising mists. Take me down. Take me down. Hold me up when I'm weary. Hold me up when I'm down. Hold me up when I'm doubting. Hold me up. Hold me up. Lay me down by the river. Lay me down by the paths I walk. Lay me down in the cooling breeze. Lay me down. Lay me down. Is now in Yiddish. To the river, zum Teich. Nimm mich zu zum Teich. Nimm mich zu zum Wasserberg. Nimm mich zu steigenden Äpplen. Nimm mich zu. Nimm mich zu. Heb mich auf, wenn ich bin müde. Heb mich auf, wenn ich bin verklemmt. Heb mich auf, wenn ich zweifel. Heb mich auf. Heb mich auf. Leg mich beim Berg vom Teich. Leg mich bei die Wegen, was ich spreis. Leg mich bei die kille Windlach. Leg mich. Leg mich.
Okay, I'm now going to bring you. No, we're going to all see the song. Okay.
Take me down to
Thank you. Thanks to Arnold. Arnold, we really put this together at about 6 o'clock tonight. He really wanted to be here tonight. He had another event on, but he was so keen. Sorry about that, everybody. That's my computer still going. Arnold really wanted to be here, but he couldn't, so he did all that. So huge thanks to him. And Karen, I missed you singing. See, Karen Feldman, I think that's for you. You're welcome to sing a song. And I'm going to now, I think that's it for us tonight. I'm going to now hand over to Faye. No, I'm not going to hand over to Faye. Go on, Faye.
I'm actually going to hand over to Daniel to close out for us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Mum, you have to mute yours.
Reduce mute.
Uh-oh. 1 second. Is that better?
Thank you. I dank.
All right, can you hear me now? I'm speaking from Kvetch's position. Good. When we conceived of Dunera about 6 months ago, as the world became strange, this night is exactly what we had in mind, that we would create an open platform for sharing culture and content and creativity and community and lots of other wonderful words starting with C, and that we would shine a light and amplify the voices of wonderful organisations that are already doing fabulous things like Kadimah, that we would pretend for a minute that we're one community, whether we live in Sydney or Melbourne or Byron Bay and even people overseas. And I think we've achieved it, and we've been going for about 6 months, and I recognise a lot of the names, and it's been wonderful to start to work with people like Faye and Miriam, who've just been fantastic and have seen the opportunity and didn't see this as a threat to something else that they were doing, but rather saw this as a wonderful platform that could really extend the voices. And you know, the reality is, I think for those of you who have subscribed to the Dunera newsletter, you'll see that we've run out of money, which was, you know, always going to happen. But I think we did very well. One of our first donors actually is on this Zoom tonight, so it's wonderful to see her. And I think, you know, the live question for us at the moment is there a need for a platform like this beyond COVID? And I think the answer is self-explanatory. I think we've only just begun, and I would just want to thank everyone involved in this event. It has filled my heart and soul. Of course, I have to use a Yiddish word, and you know, is that wonderful word that's hard to translate into English, but we all know, which is naches, which I've been told one sheps and doesn't shlepp, which is very important. And naches apparently is the special pride that one gets in the achievements of one's children. And yet here I sit watching my beautiful mother read her fantastic poem, and I am kvelling with naches. And this painting behind me, she painted as well. The woman has serious talents, which she hides under a bushel. And of course, really the whole purpose of this whole crazy 6-month Dunera thing was just to force my mother to read a poem in public. So I thank you all for being part of that ruse. This won't be the last show. We have one more wonderful cultural thing coming up. I can announce it here for the first time. On the 17th of December, we're partnering with Jewish Care in Sydney to put on a musical performance like that To Melbourne with Love concert we did, but especially targeting the creativity in our Russian-speaking community. And we're calling it Muzika Vechna, music is forever. There'll be a lot of Russian spoken, but given that my Yiddish is really not all that fantastic, but I feel as though I understood every single word that was spoken tonight. We will be doing that. And I would love you all to join in. There will be some details in the chat, no doubt. My final thanks are to Emmanuel Synagogue, who, you know, are the institutional partner behind Dunera and who very kindly gave us access to their cultural fund for people who want to make donations, and have really given Dunera so much freedom to grow, and really have just backed the vision, you know, wholeheartedly. We couldn't have done it without them. And the creative team, Ilan Kidron, who has run all the music, and Lisa Goldberg, who's done all the cooking, and my unbelievable partner who does all the tech, because like I can't really do anything. Sarita Gold, who has really built the website and runs the newsletters and does so much. And I know it's a labour of love for her. And we hope that if people really like it, and if there's a reason for it to continue to exist, that we'll find a way to do it. And it'll involve some donations, no doubt, and maybe some institutional ownership, and hopefully some other funding. I would hate to move to a world where people have to pay. I think the joy of people being able to come together and participate on things like this, particularly older people, particularly people at home alone, whether or not COVID enforces that, has made it all worthwhile. So on that note, we're only half an hour over time. Well, that's a good Jewish event. And I wish you all a wonderful Hanukkah, if it's not too early. And I thank you all for your participation. Is that okay, Miriam?
That is great. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. I think Faye, I and Sarita have had a great time putting this together. And thank you everyone for coming along and participating and taking a chance and giving poetry this audience. So it's an absolute thrill. So thank you. I'll do it again. So Faye, do you want to say any parting words? You don't, do you? You're hiding back there unmuted.
Schönen Dank zu allen.
Thank you.
Und einen guten Abend. Bleib gesund, bleib stark.
Sei gesund.